All right, and we're back with our final segment, and we're going to talk all things crocodile. In this third segment, we have with us, joining us via Zoom from ACES Wildlife Rescue Director Chris Summers. He's he's joining us from Ambergris Key right now. Mr. Summers, good morning. How are you
Good
this
morning,
morning,
sir.
sir?
Wonderful, thank you. Other than this little bit of rain we've had come in, I thought we were done with rainy
Well, I
season. But
was going to ask you what the weather is like out in San Pedro, but that explains it. It's also raining
it's
in
not as
Belize
bad as
City.
what I've heard the mainland. I've heard the mainland's been pretty wet. We
Oh,
get a little
yeah.
bit, but not too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got the forecast this morning, and we were telling everyone keep dry, and then we walked outside for a few minutes, and it's just pouring rain outside.
Mr. Summers, you're one of the experts with crocodiles here in Belize. You and your
Good stuff.
organization coexisting with crocodiles. When we talk about coexisting with crocodiles, what are we talking about specifically? I know that there are places in Belize City, some of the lagoons, some of the water and swamp areas, that crocodiles actually exist. And surprisingly enough, for those who are not aware of the landscape in Belize, a lot of these waterways are near the homes of certain residents. And then we're
Yeah.
talking about crocodiles in the ocean and along the beaches where people visit on a regular basis. We're talking about swimmers, persons going to swim. We're talking about tourists as well who visit the keys and the beaches. So there is a need for coexisting. Talk a bit to us about that.
Okay, so it really all comes down to understanding crocodiles and crocodiles' behavior, and then in certain cases we have to adapt our behavior. Crocodiles are here. They can be found throughout the entire country, in the coast, out in the Keys, as you said, and then of course we have the freshwater species as well. You're going to find them up the inland rivers. And as we kind of develop and expand as a civilization, we're moving more and more into what would be classified as wild animals territory, right? So we are going to be coming into close contact with crocodiles, whether we want to or not. So there's certain behaviors that we need to adopt to minimize crocodile-human conflict. Now, it's important to state off the bat that the species we have here, both of them, the American saltwater crocodile and the Morlet's freshwater crocodile, you would classify them as shy and timid species, okay? And what we mean by that is they usually don't see people as a source of food, as in they don't seek us out, they don't hunt us. That doesn't mean to say that things don't happen. Things do happen, and when it does, it's awful. But when you compare to other species across the world, these guys are very shy. Their typical food source is generally small. With the American crocodiles, even the great big big, what you would call monsters, behemoths, they're hunting fish, they're hunting shrimp, they're hunting crab, they're hunting birds. We are so much larger than the prey that they're usually targeting. Now, what we want to do to ensure that kind of behavior continues, that they remain shy of people, they remain fearful in their natural state, man, one of the key things it comes down to is feeding. And that could be what we would call direct feeding and indirect feeding. So direct feeding, we don't see too much of anymore. That's, all comes down to there's a lot of education and outreach and enforcement from the forest department. And direct feeding would be where people go and purposely throw food to an animal. Usually it's done for tourists, as a way to kind of bring the animal close. But this teaches that animal that we are to be associated with food. All right, that takes away any natural fear they have. It takes away any shyness and associates us with food.
Wow.
That is going to increase the likelihood of an attack dramatically on people and or pets. But like I said, thankfully we don't have too much of that anymore. The other type of feeding would be indirect feeding, and this is something we have to do a lot of outreach on this. And it's not somebody that's purposely feeding the animal, but let's say you live on a canal or a lagoon where crocodiles exist as well, and you come home from fishing every day, you clean your fish, you throw the fish scraps right there. Sooner or later, that animal is going to clock on to the fact that, okay, every time this guy comes home, there's an easy meal sitting there waiting for me. And then their behavior can gradually progress to something that we would call nuisance behavior or problematic behavior. So this is one of the key things we try and get across to people is just make sure you are not providing any source of food for these animals. Give them no reason to be coming close to you, because that's one of the biggest issues that we have.
So I had a encounter many years ago with one of our shrimp farms where a crocodile came in through the mouth of the sea into the lagoon and then on into one of our into our ponds. And you know, the reality is that we didn't have control over that, and we didn't know who to call because we didn't want to just kill it, right?
No, of course not.
And so when it comes to instances like that, what does ACES provide?
Well, shrimp farms are a difficult scenario compared to your average living situation because they're so big. Shrimp farms generally, they're so big. It's such a large body of water or multiple bodies of water. And being a shrimp farm, there is plenty of food source in there for the animals. And the thing is, with relocating crocodiles, most of the time they're going to return to where they came from. You know, unless you take this animal 100 miles away, you know, they're more than likely they're going to return, or another one is going to come and take over the open territory. And that's what, you know, it's relocating is generally never the long-term solution. In terms of shrimp farms, I would say, your best bet is to try and find ways that animals are accessing it. Like if they're coming in through pipes and inlets to the ocean, try and block that off in ways that the animals can't get through, but it doesn't restrict the flow of water and everything else you need. With homes, it all comes down to fencing. Is what we try and get across to people who are living directly on the waterways where crocs are going to be existing. Is you got to get fencing up. That's going to protect your pets. It's going to protect your children. It's going to prevent the animals from coming onto your property if that's something that concerns you, which, by the way, is something that crocodiles just do as part of their daily need for survival. When they come on land, it's a way of thermoregulating their body temperature, of warming up, because they don't have any control of that temperature like we do. So I know a lot of people freak out and call us when they see a crocodile lying on the shore or lying on the bank, but there's nothing sinister in it. It's just a part of their daily needs. But I understand people don't want that in their yard. So fencing is key, and it doesn't, you know, we're not talking about Fort Knox here. You don't need some 10-foot tall, 3-foot, you know, deep concrete wall. What we've done in the past with people in low-income areas that can't afford fencing is we've gone around and scavenged things like pallets from the hardware stores and the port, and you know, kind of deliver that, and that is more than sufficient enough to kind of make a barrier, because all you're doing is just stopping that animal coming in or taking away that ambush capabilities. Your pets can have free roam of your yard without having to worry about it. So it's just, when we're talking about coexisting, we're talking about just simple little things like this to minimize that conflict.
You know, it's interesting for me, a bit alarming, the fact that we actually have these gigantic animals living among us. You don't necessarily think of it, I guess, until you encounter it, or until you actually see images and you say, wow, those actually are in Belize, these large crocodiles. We've had incidents of attacks on humans, let's be real, and there was one recent case in Key Cocker that we reported on. What went wrong there?
You know, that it was just dumb. It was not dumb luck. It was just bad luck. You know, like when we talk about things like coexisting, as you can see on the poster here, we're talking about swimming only in daytime hours and avoiding dusk and dawn. You know, the gentleman, according to reports, was out at like 10 o'clock in the morning, which is not generally hunting time for crocodiles. And he was also in an area where there's generally not crocs, because it's the split. There's usually a lot of people there. There's a lot of commotion, a lot of noise, a lot of music, things that crocodiles just generally don't dig. So it was just a very scary and unfortunate incident that the gentleman happened to be spearfishing at a time that there happened to be a crocodile there when there usually isn't. You know, if somebody asked me, like, what could he have done to change and make sure that that didn't happen, there's nothing different that he could have done.
So
It was
what's your advice for someone who comes in close proximity with a crocodile, not knowing that a crocodile is within their area, and they come in close proximity? We've heard when you come in contact with a bear, you stand still and you don't say a word. You're in the water, you can't necessarily stand,
Yeah.
depending on
You
the depth
punch
of
the
the
shark.
No,
water.
I would
What
say
do you do?
okay, so if you're in the water and you come across a crocodile, I would say you want to do the same thing you do with sharks, and that is you want to move away slowly. If you
Okay.
start freaking out and panicking and splashing around like wounded prey, you might trigger that predatory instinct. Oh, there's something here to hunt. So I would say move away slowly, calmly, and get out of the water.
And if the
I mean,
crocodile continues to approach you,
whilst you're in the water,
yeah,
I mean, just keep going. If he's coming slowly, then
yeah,
just keep going, just keep backing up, nice and slow. Don't.
okay,
Don't panic.
You ever had a dog charge at you?
yeah, I've had it.
Okay, what happens if you turn and run?
You don't. Well, if you turn and run, they chase you. So there are
They're
times
gonna
you kind
chase
of
you,
have
and
to
it's
stand
the same.
firm.
It's the same thing with all predators.
Yeah.
If you, and I'm not saying necessarily to stand your ground because
Yeah.
you don't want to stand your ground in the
Right.
water because we're
Right.
not built for water.
Right.
I'm saying if you act like prey and you start freaking out, you might trigger that predatory instinct. So yeah, your best bet is just to kind of, if you're in shallow water, same as like a bear, you kind of want to stand up so you see your full. Because if you're just like in the water and just your little head's bobbing around on the surface, they don't necessarily see that there's a full-grown, person there. So if you stand up and they see that, okay, this is a much larger animal than I
Yeah.
thought I was approaching.
Yeah.
Tell
So
us a
yeah,
little
like
bit.
make yourself big if you can, and then slowly back away out of the water.
Tell us a little bit about ACES and the education campaign that you all have going on for educating people about crocodiles.
Okay, so with crocodiles, we respond to, particularly here on the Key, because the Key is so small and it's expanding so rapidly. We receive in upwards of 100 calls a year. People
Wow.
calling our hotline and reporting, okay, there's a croc here doing this, or we're worried about that. Because they're a native species, they're natural here to the islands, like they're always going to be here. So we have to find ways to kind of coexist with them. And that's what the education is about, because people are going to continue to expand into the wetlands and where the mangrove once were. And those areas are still going to get flooded during rainy season, right? Just it doesn't stop being wetlands just because we put a house there. And when these areas get flooded, and the same thing happens on the mainland, when these wetland areas get flooded during rainy season, the crocs have areas to move through that they didn't previously have during dry season. So this is why we say, like on these posts, when we're talking about this coexisting, what can people do? Again, it comes back to barriers. Like if you don't want a croc living under your house and it's something that's happened before or it's happened to your neighbor, we got to get barriers around that house, because a raised home that's raised a few feet off the floor, just like we're seeing right here on this picture, that is a perfect man-made cave for a crocodile. They love that, and they didn't have to put any effort into digging and wasting any energy. Somebody else did it all for them. And when there's a little bit of water like that, oh, they love it.
I can't begin to imagine you stepping down your stairs and
then
then
there's a
you look
crocodile
under
right
to
there.
see a huge
Yeah.
crocodile. That's
Yeah,
the start of a horror movie.
Yeah, that'll make you nervous. That'll make you nervous.
That
all right.
definitely make you nervous. Go ahead.
And then, of course, like in scenarios like that, then yes, relocation is the answer, because
Yeah.
that's like somebody's home. It's directly under the house. That is not where the animals are supposed to be. So we come, we set traps, or if there's enough room for me to go under there, we'll go under there and go and get it and move it. But we want to prevent that from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
So the idea is, prevention instead of a cure in this case.
You talk about relocation, and I just want to jump in there because we've talked about what you do when you see a crocodile, or you come face to face with a crocodile in water. But on land, we've seen incidents where a crocodile might appear in a residential area, and we see residents take up the responsibility or the task to kind of try and relocate that crocodile. Little to no experience, persons attempt to subdue the crocodile, whatever means or ways they try to do so. Do you encourage this type of behavior from residents, especially persons who may not know what they're doing?
No. I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, man. But no, we absolutely don't encourage it. Like these these animals are so quick, and generally generally they're not going to attack people. But when you've got a crocodile cornered and there's nowhere for him to go, there's nowhere for him to run, you put them in that flight or fight response, right? And if they've got nowhere to fly to, nowhere to run to, then they're going to defend themselves in whatever means necessary. And if you're trying to get hands on that croc, or trying to get a rope on that croc, you're trying to do some stuff you've seen on TV, man, it takes a split second for it to go from under control to completely out of control, and now you're missing fingers and missing a hand or worse. Now, I understand in scenarios, people feel like they're left with no options, so they're going to do what they have to do. And yes, we understand that. But no, we don't encourage it. I would say your best course of action first is to either call us or call CRC, call the Belize Forest Department, should always be your first call. Call the police, call any authorities that you can on the matter to get advice on what to do. Yeah.
Any final advice for our viewers out there?
Just be cautious. Do the things I talked about as far as your fencing and your barriers and things. When you're going and swimming in areas where there may potentially be crocodiles, just think about your surroundings. When we're talking about the freshwater rivers, I'd be going down places where there's nice open beaches, it's nice open. I wouldn't be jumping in somewhere where there's, loads of overhanging vegetation and places for crocodiles to hide, because even though they don't generally seek us out, they can make mistakes. They can misidentify what's kind of, when crocs are underwater, they hunt by using motion sensors. They don't generally see so good. Their vision underwater is kind of iffy. So they hunt on movement. So if there's something kind of moving around, splashing around, and they can't see clearly what it is, and we've had numerous incidents of this in the country as well, where people have been bit by mistake by a crocodile not knowing what they were grabbing. So when you go swimming in the rivers, go to nice, clear waters where there's nice, gradual beaches. Same thing with the coasts. I generally advise people to stay away from areas that are dense in mangrove, because that's where crocodiles like to hang out. And avoid dusk and dawn and the couple of hours before and after it, because dusk through dawn, that's your prime hunting time for crocodiles.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mr. Summers, I'm sure it's a conversation we could continue.
Yeah, you got this all day.
hopefully one of these times we could send a team out to come and visit you out there and see some of the work you guys are doing. If that's something you're interested in, it's a conversation we could have and we could continue having. But it was a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. With that, we'll take our final break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up our show for this morning. Stay tuned.